Hope you're having a good day today. Thank you for joining me once again. We are going to look at Esther for another day. Today we're going to be thinking about Haman. Now, our hymn is I'd Rather Have Jesus.
I'd rather have Jesus than silver or gold. I'd rather be his than have riches untold. I'd rather have Jesus than houses or lands. I'd rather be led by his nail-pierced hand than to be the king of a vast domain, or be held in sin's dread sway. I'd rather have Jesus than anything this world affords today.
Let's look at our passage now. We left off yesterday as Mordecai gets word to Esther that she needs to go to the king. And Esther says, if I perish, I perish. And she was going to go before the king. Verse 1 of Esther 5, it happened on the third day that Esther put on her royal robes, stood in the inner court of the king's palace, across from the king's house. Right? Respectful, humble. But there she is. When the king saw Queen Esther standing there, the king held out to Esther the golden scepter, verse 2. And that's the signal. So Esther went near and touched the top of the scepter, and Esther, the king says to her, what do you wish? What is your request? And Esther says, I would like to have a banquet. If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet that I have prepared for him. And the king said, bring Haman quickly, that he may do as Esther has said. So the king, Haman, went to the banquet that Esther had prepared. At the banquet of wine, the king said to Esther, what is your petition? And Esther says, verse 8, if I found favor in the sight of the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfill my request, then let the king and Haman come to the banquet which I shall prepare for them, and tomorrow I will do as the king has said. So Haman went out that day joyful, with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he did not stand or tremble before him, he was filled with indignation against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself and went home, and he sent and called for his friends and his wife Zeresh. Then Haman told them of his great riches, the multitude of his children, everything in which the king had promoted him, how he had advanced him above the officials and servants of the king. Moreover, Haman said, besides, Queen Esther invited no one but me to come in with the king to the banquet that she prepared, and tomorrow I am again invited by her, along with the king. Yet all this avails me nothing so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. Then his wife, Zeresh, and all his friends said to him, let a gallows be made 50 cubits high, and in the morning suggest to the king that Mordecai be hanged on it, then go merrily with the king to the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, so he had the gallows made, and perhaps you know who's going to hang on those gallows, because it is not Mordecai. It's going to be Haman himself. So I was just thinking about this passage in connection with our hymn, I'd Rather Have Jesus. And what would Haman rather have? What would Haman rather have? And what Haman was interested in is what a lot of folks are interested in. So look at the account. Verse 9, that he went out that day joyful with a glad heart, but Mordecai did not stand or tremble before him. Everybody else would. And what he was looking for was exactly what the song speaks about. Men's applause. And that's what Haman was interested in. He was interested in what others thought of him. It's a sad thing, isn't it? That he was more interested in that. You come up to the New Testament, to the Gospels, and the Pharisees were interested in the same thing. Rather than in what God thought, they were interested in doing their works to be seen by men. That's the first thing. that Haman was interested in, men's applause. What else? Verse 10. And what amazing restraint Haman had there in verse 10. Looks like he probably would have liked to just have killed Mordecai on the spot, but he restrained himself. He goes home and he calls for his friends and his wife. And that's what a lot of folks are looking for too. They're looking for family's approval. They're looking for their spouse's approval. They're looking for their parents' approval. They're looking for their grandparents' approval. They're looking for their friends' approval. And that's what they're interested in. And it's a sad thing, isn't it? But a lot of times folks will put family, they'll put family first. They'll put family above God. I'd rather have Jesus. I'd rather have Jesus. But also, in the account, verse 11, Haman told them of his great riches. I wonder if that's the first time he ever told his wife about how rich he was. What do you think? Probably not. He probably spoke about that pretty often. You think that's the first time he told his friends how well off he was? Probably not. But that's what he's interested in. Riches. And what his riches can do for him. And all of the ways he'd been promoted and how he'd advanced him and all those things. But it's just stuff. Just stuff. But that's what a lot of folks are interested in. They're just interested in money. It's like the foolish farmer. Soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. And the Lord says, you fool, this night your soul will be required of you. It's money. Haman's about to die. He's got all sorts of money. Not taking it with him, is he? Haman's about to die along with, I believe it speaks about family as well, if I remember correctly. We'll add one more thing to our list, though. Because Haman has all these things, and Haman has something else. Yet all this avails me nothing so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. And the one more thing that Haman has is anger. He'd rather have anger. And a lot of people would rather have anger than Jesus. It's very easy to hold on to anger. And Haman has no reason to hold on to anger. We have to be real careful. When people mistreat us, we have to be very careful. It's not wrong to be angry. But the verse says be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath. And so we live peaceably with all men as much as lieth within us. And we give place to wrath, according to Romans, because that's the Lord's department. Vengeance belongs to the Lord. Doesn't belong to us. So it's not wrong to be angry, to have righteous indignation, but we better be real careful. Because we can hold on to it, and eventually righteous indignation may turn into sinful pride. And why is this happening to me? And we just need to be careful. Haman, he's got anger, and a lot of folks have anger. It's easy for us. It's easy for any of us to do. To be more interested in money and family and what others think, and just even nurturing our own anger. It can happen. Of course, like I said, what happens with Haman, and we need to just look briefly at it. The king honors Mordecai, because that book of the Chronicles is read before the king when Mordecai had saved his life, and so he ends up honoring Mordecai, and Haman can't believe it. Then chapter 7, you have the next day, and you have the dinner when Haman falls upon Esther. You have all of this account as Esther talks about how her people had been sold to be destroyed, and Haman ends up being hanged on those gallows. Look, the 50, and there they are. Hang him on it. Maybe they didn't hang his family. Perhaps. But you can tell, read on the rest of the account, and all of their enemies are going to be defeated. And it may be that family, if it doesn't say it explicitly, they may have been in there. I'd have to might go in and read it. But as you have the Lord being victorious. The Lord was victorious. I'd rather have Jesus. For Hadassah, I'd rather have Jesus. For Mordecai, I'd rather have Jesus. For Haman, I'd rather have all this other stuff. Better be real careful where our priorities are. Appreciate you. Hope you have a good day. Join us tomorrow for another portion of our daily praise.